The art of good business is being a good middleman. The biggest companies that you never heard of make billions of dollars every year by inserting themselves as wholesalers, distributors, licensors, or aggregators, getting between you and the factories that make your stuff. The only problem is, everybody kind of hates middlemen, which is why entire industries have been created from the ground up to cut them out. By offering direct-to-consumer, peer-to-peer, direct selling, disruptive, streamlined outlet platform solutions to make consuming everything an easier, faster, and cheaper experience. The only problem is, it never really works. And in our venture capital-fueled rush to cut out the middlemen, we have just created even bigger ones.
I would simply put, we cut out the middleman. So we design our own frames, we work directly with manufacturers.
Yeah, we cut out the middleman and voila!
Uber on Monday said it's cutting 3,000 more jobs in a second wave of layoffs.
More and more Americans are cutting out the middleman in the prescription drug industry.
We cut out all of the middlemen. No wholesalers, no middlemen, no distributors, no importers, just direct to your front door.
So last month, the online coupon code extension Honey was exposed for basically being a massive fraud that would claim referral revenue from its users' online shopping even if they found no coupons to offer, and even if shoppers were directed to the website from another affiliate that actually did most of the work of selling them that product. They inserted themselves as a useless middleman and allegedly claimed billions of dollars in referral revenue. Now, unless you were living under a rock, you have probably already heard all about this. The original expose video has over 15 million views, and basically every major influencer on the platform has come out to call it the biggest scam in YouTube history. It's a big claim, considering large YouTube sponsors have given unlicensed mental health advice, leaked people's personal data, frozen their life savings, or misappropriated their investments. Hot take alert, but a multimillionaire like Linus not getting his referral revenue from Amazon is simply not as big of a deal as someone losing their life savings on a bank they were told to sign up for by a trusted finfluencer. Now, this is not to defend Honey in any capacity. What they did was clearly highly unethical at best, and will probably be proved fraudulent in the many upcoming court battles headed their way. But you would be forgiven for thinking that the reason it's getting so much attention from YouTubers is because the sponsor was stealing from the YouTubers themselves. The art of good business is being a good middleman. All of the biggest channels on this platform are made possible because at some point they may be able to convince you to buy something. That means they can directly or indirectly be rewarded for that through advertising. The reason this has rustled so many jimmies is because someone beat them at their own game, even if they weren't playing fair. Now, in the interest of total transparency, this channel is just as reliant on advertising to pay our team as the other big creators. And while we don't take sponsorships from financial firms because of the potential for you to lose your entire life savings, we honestly probably would have worked with Honey if we were offered, because just like anybody else, we didn't see anything wrong with them. So alright, with that out of the way, this video is not about the Honey scam in particular. It's about what it represents. If you buy something like this stylish personal neck fan off Amazon, Amazon itself doesn't actually sell the product. It just provides a marketplace and distribution services to a third-party distributor. That third-party distributor buys these products from an Alibaba wholesaler in China, who themselves work with white label suppliers who work with manufacturers. Even for a relatively simple piece of consumer junk, there were 5 middlemen between you and the person actually making that stuff. If you include an affiliate link in there, there's 6 different businesses that need to be paid, cutting into the profits or more likely raising the price of what could be a simple exchange. Consumer retail isn't even the worst example. Consultants, brokers, and fund managers and technology platforms have all built some of the most lucrative businesses in history by capitalizing on the golden age of the middleman. But why is this happening now? Middlemen are nothing new, but there are a few reasons why it's become particularly lucrative in just the last 2 decades. The first reason is we have simply mandated middlemen. The list of corporate regulations only grows longer every year, and so too do industry guidelines, best practices, frameworks, reporting standards, certifications, privacy controls, and self-imposed goals like ESG, DEI, CSR, GEP, GRC, and whatever other BS McKinsey cooks up in the new year. Some of these rules are absolutely necessary, and genuinely help both consumers and workers. Some of them are just a little bit silly, and some of them only exist to make sure that a group can make money by consulting on the issues they create, looking at you, car dealerships. But either way, there are a lot of rules that businesses have to adhere to. Out of this, it's become very lucrative to provide third-party solutions that offload compliance onto another company that is better handled to deal with it. This both protects businesses from legal repercussions and lets them focus on where they actually add value in their business. Visa and MasterCard are some of the most valuable companies in the world, and their business operates exclusively on middlemaning transactions between credit card processors like Stripe or Square, and banks who are themselves middlemen between the customer and the business that they are buying from. Businesses could just take cash, or work out their own payment system, but it's just way easier to pay a few cents to Visa to process the transaction and let them handle the accounting, computing, and dispute resolution. It's also not like businesses have much of an option. When was the last time you paid in cash for anything? Lock your answer in the comments below. Of course, a small group of people live and die by the Benjamins, but the vast majority of consumer spending these days is done with credit cards, debit cards, or more recently, buy now, pay later services. Beyond letting people spend money they don't have, they are just easier. Any business that didn't want to work with these middlemen would immediately make it very difficult for most of their potential customers to shop with them. Now, this isn't a problem by itself. Modern payment providers have made doing business a lot easier for everybody, and they should be rewarded for providing that service. But as things like this get more complicated, every extra step of the supply, payment, or marketing process is an opportunity for a business to gain market power and squeeze out a little bit more from consumers. Even benign payment providers with lots of competition are causing a long list of problems for consumers. But that's got nothing on what the middlemen are doing to regular workers. To kick off the new year, a lot of people have been talking about H-1B skilled worker visas. These are something we have talked about a lot on this channel before, because they give companies the opportunity to employ workers from overseas if they can't find any workers in America willing to do the same job. Those foreign workers are then dependent on their employer to maintain their residency, which makes them great employees, because they really can't quit unless they find another company willing to sponsor them. A lot of companies, especially tech companies, clearly prefer these workers because they have more staff loyalty and won't argue too hard for a pay increase. The rules and restrictions on these visas are pretty extensive, and the rules are supposed to stop companies undercutting American workers and just hiring more subservient expat workers instead. But it's really easy for big companies to get around. If you are the CEO of a tech company and don't want to pay tech developer money for your engineers, just put up a job posting paying well below market rates. When nobody wants the job, you can then claim that you need to access someone with distinguished merit since nobody in America can fill your role. It's a broken system that's not great for American workers who get undercut for jobs, expats who get exploited by the companies they rely on, and genuine immigrants trying to earn their way into the country. But it's great for your bottom line. The problem for you is that companies are only allowed to hire so many H-1B workers. So a new industry has developed where large consulting firms will hire as many H-1B workers as they can. Tech companies like Google, Meta, and X are getting a lot of attention for their exploitation of these programs. But according to the Department of Immigration records compiled by the New York Times, the largest H-1B sponsors have actually been middleman firms that bill out their consultants hourly. This report was initially published over a decade ago, but more recent data still shows that distinguished labor hire agencies have learned to game the system. This lets companies offload the legal and reputational risk of using these workers onto the middleman consulting firms, and even with a small premium for their services, it's still cheaper than paying market rates for technical skills. But the regulations arms race is only the first reason why we have entered the golden age of the middleman. So it's time to learn how money works to find out how the best businesses became other people's business. This week's video is sponsored by Morning Brew. Morning Brew is a free daily email newsletter that keeps you updated on business, tech, and world news in a quick and witty way. It's designed to cut through the dense and confusing news, giving you the must-know updates in a fun, easy-to-digest format. I've been using Morning Brew to start my mornings, and it's been a game changer. For example, I just learned that Chicago has transitioned all 400 municipal buildings to renewable energy, cutting its carbon footprint by the equivalent of 62,000 cars each year. Plus, weight loss drugs like GLP-1s are shaking up industries, reducing snack sales and even lowering grocery bills for families. Over 4 million professionals are already hooked, and it takes less than 15 seconds to sign up. Sign up for Morning Brew today by clicking the link in the description. It's completely free, so there's no reason not to try it. A long time ago, in an economy far, far away, the closest thing we had to businesses producing products for consumption were smiths, saddlers, coddlers, and other ye olde tradesmen. These workers made things by hand only after an order was placed with them. Given their basic tools and lack of production lines, they didn't have an abundance of goods that they had to worry about finding a buyer for. They just made enough to keep up with orders. This really changed with the Industrial Revolution, and true mass production where consumer goods could be made faster than people could buy them. over time, the modern business model of a manufacturer selling to a wholesaler who sold to a retailer who sold to a customer started to emerge, because it worked. Before this turns into a How History Works video, every step of this process has a part to play in making sure commerce is conducted smoothly. There have been hundreds of startup companies that have sold themselves on using a direct-to-consumer model to cut out the middleman. Even the biggest direct-to-consumer startups with the most investor money like Casper Mattresses, Bonobos Tailored Clothing, Movement Watches, and Everlane Fashion have either faced significant financial difficulties, been acquired by a traditional retailer, or gone out of business entirely. The YouTube channel Modern MBA did a great deep dive on Casper Mattresses in particular, analytically pulling apart their broken business model. If you're interested in thorough business analytics, I'll leave a link to his channel below. The point is, effective middlemen don't actually make businesses less efficient. If anything, they actually make the whole process too efficient. The manufacturer's job is to make stuff as efficiently as possible. The wholesaler buys from the manufacturer in advance to make sure that they have consistent cash flows. And the retailer handles customer service and sales, but relies on the wholesaler to make sure goods are available to sell. The wholesaler may look like a useless middleman, but they are a buffer to make sure that manufacturers don't have to worry about who they are going to sell their junk to, and retailers don't have to worry about not having enough junk to sell. That's the idea anyway. Some companies are big enough that they can be both the retailer and the wholesaler, which is why Walmart and other big box stores will be able to outcompete local independent retailers. Now, eventually, these companies figured out that it's cheaper to do the manufacturing offshore, which meant supply chains got longer and more complicated, making the job of the wholesaler even more important, and potentially more profitable. Today, the only retailers that can really compete on value are major corporations that integrate wholesale into their operations, or get around it altogether. This has given them more market power over both producers and consumers because the barriers to entry into these markets has become so much steeper. We aren't living in the golden age of middlemen because there are more of them. In fact, it's actually because there are less of them. They just have a lot more power. Big companies have realized it's a lot easier to gain market power as a middleman than as someone who deals with the end consumer. Catherine Judge is a law professor at Columbia and published the book Direct: The Rise of the Middleman Economy and the Revolution Underway. In her book, she outlines how technology, globalization, and financialization have all worked hand in hand to allow a small group of companies to become middlemen in business operations that just weren't possible that long ago. In particular, she focuses on the collection of data as a tool that is uniquely useful to middlemen, because being right in the middle of operations means they can access information from both suppliers and consumers. Effectively leveraging data is an incredibly powerful tool to reduce costs on one side of the business and maximize sales on the other. Even if you ran a business that could somehow supply products with the same economies of scale as Amazon and Walmart, you would still find it incredibly difficult to compete with them because they have so much data about when to order stock, where to build retail stores and distribution centers, how many drivers need to work a particular route, when people are most likely to make a purchase, and what items should be presented to them first as they log in or walk into a location. It's all data, and being the biggest middleman in their respective fields allows them to collect more of it and use it in more ways. Other companies can purchase data from data brokers, or even use select meta-analytics provided by the big tech companies, but it's never going to be as comprehensive, detailed, or as deep as the good stuff they keep for themselves. The final point that Judge makes is lobbying power. These companies can argue for more or less regulation in the fields that are important to them extremely effectively. Votes over boring middlemen regulations barely get lawmakers to show up, let alone get the interest of the general public. So this is amongst the most effective ways for these companies to lobby. Now, the solution to this problem is the same solution to a lot of problems in corporate America. Clamp down hard on companies with too much market power, especially those that are not as obvious as the Googles and Facebooks of the world. There is one industry that has taken this middleman process to the extreme, and that is finance. Private equity and broad asset managers have become some of the most powerful middlemen in history. Go and watch this next video to see why most people haven't realized just how concentrated the economy has become. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.